Today on the Book of Boot, I'm here to tell you a story about some good friends of mine known as the Boston Associates. You see, there were these guys that had a lot of money. Guys like Abbott Lawrence, Amos Lawrence, Patrick Tracy Jackson, Nathan Appleton, and we call them the Boston Associates. These guys had so much money, they had no idea what to do with it. Like them, I had money to burn. So they found a way to turn money into cloth, back into money, with the help of a guy, not quite sure what he looks like, named Francis Cabot Lowell. They wanted to expand their mill industry. So they went and found me, and I created the city of Lowell.
Betsy Guppy Chamberlain arrived in Lowell in 1831, having traveled over 100 miles away from Wolfeboro, New Hampshire. The sparse public records on Chamberlain's time in Lowell show a varied work history. She started as a cloth inspector at the Suffolk Mill and ran a boarding house by 1840. This same year, Betsy began writing for the Lowell Offering. Her stories dealt with topics such as women's rights and the oppression and mistreatment of Indigenous people. Another Lowell Offering author, Harriet Hanson Robinson, would later suggest that Chamberlain had Indigenous ancestry herself.
Much of Sarah Bagley's time in Lowell was spent fighting for fair treatment. She began working as a weaver at the Hamilton Mills in 1837. Early in her career, Bagley wrote, "Pleasures there are, even in factory life." But Bagley's opinion on industrial work soon changed. In 1844, she became president of the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association. Through petitions, Bagley organized women to push for a shorter 10-hour workday. Through constant pressure, Bagley and her fellow activists succeeded in getting a 30-minute reduction. Bagley continued to push for reforms as the editor of the radical Voice of Industry newspaper. In 1846, Bagley continued to push boundaries and became the first female telegraph operator. The efforts of activists like Bagley paved the way for more women to fight for equality.
In May of 1858, they came to Lowell. Here, Betsy and Caroline told their painful story of abuse and exploitation to Judge Isaac Morse. He filed and won a suit against Keyes. The Cornwall story was shared in the Lowell paper Vox Populi and other anti-slavery papers. With their much overdue inheritance, Betsy and Caroline stayed in Lowell. Betsy made a home for herself next to Caroline, where they lived among other free people.
Hi, I'm Millie Prudence Taylor, a Yankee farm girl living in the city of Lowell, Massachusetts, and this is my morning routine. Dearest Mother, I apologize for not writing sooner. I hope everyone is doing well. The glorious sound of the morning bells chime in to wake us up. We all gracefully get up from our cozy beds and make our way to the mills. I quickly commence work. The pleasant sound of the rhythmic looms fill my ears. The city of Lowell came into being, Americans were drinking more alcohol than ever before. In this climate, some early Llewellyans started taking temperance pledges and forming societies to encourage total abstinence from alcohol. Through groups such as the Coldwater Army, some women used the temperance movement as an outlet for power and organizing. In later years, temperance groups were also often aligned with suffrage clubs. In Lowell, the Women's Christian Temperance Union and the Equal Suffrage League were neighbors and allies. In addition to 5.6 miles of canals, Lowell boasts an extensive network of paths and promenades designed for leisure. For workers who spent up to 14 hours a day working inside, these paths were a cool and delightful retreat. promenading was also a way to be social and to show off clothing bought with hard work. But the Sunday promenade was not open to everyone. While wealthier residents and mill operatives sought a warmer tint from the free sunshine and fresh air, canal workers continued their intensive labor. On the other side of the promenade, they routinely drained and cleaned the canals on Sundays. As with the rest of the city, it took hard work to make space for play. More than a century after they were first built, these waterways underwent significant repair and restoration. Today, they are used for education and even the occasional Sunday promenade.
But the way people experienced time began to change as the American Industrial Revolution came to places like Lowell. The mill owners especially cared a lot about time. Each mill complex contained a massive clock tower which dictated the workers' days. It rang out at the beginning and end of every workday and signaled the paltry half-hour breaks that were breakfast and lunch. Compared to the life of farmers, which, while dictated by sunrise and sunset, was ultimately more flexible, this strictly regulated, well-oiled machine came as something of a shock to workers.
Thank you for watching our video. Please remember to like, share, leave a comment, and subscribe. It really helps us grow the channel. Also, if you're looking for more history-related content, then we invite you to head over to our website, americasbesthistory.com. There you'll find hundreds of well-researched articles on a plethora of topics ranging in dates from 1491 to the present day. We upload new articles weekly. Hope to see you there.